Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the counselor's office. I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor, and we are back with another Destiny 2 Reacts. That's right, Destiny 2 has been on the brain with Final Shape. Next week, there is nothing but Destiny, and it looks really bad for me because I've been doing nothing but Destiny content, and I don't want to be just a Destiny content creator if I even become one. But here we are anyways. Ladies and gentlemen, let's jump right into it. Today, we are reacting to Games Radar. And as you can tell by the title below, Chris Proctor interview. That's right. Destiny 2's lead gun guy answers our biggest questions about the final shape. New weapon mods and the next raid DPS. Ooh, the meta. And just a small amount of power creep. Just a little bit. Just a bit. All right, interview. Weapons lead Chris Proctor on Destiny 2's evolving arsenal. A lot is riding on Destiny 2. Really is. There's a lot. The final shape, and per my hands-on preview on the expansion campaign, Bungie is checking all boxes so far. The narrative looks promising. The new prismatic subclass feels incredible, and the sweeping balance changes across the game seem to be moving it forward to a healthier spot. One element I didn't get to spend all that much time experimenting was in my play session, simply due to limited time and access involved, was broader arsenal coming in the final shape. The new guns that I did see, including a precious few exotics, all seem to have potential or immediately impress me. But there are a dozen more waiting in the wings. This expansion is also making some foundational weapon changes and setting up more to come in the future, with a few key mods disappearing and a blanket buff coming to many archetypes. To get a better understanding of the new guns and how our old guns are going to change, I sat down with weapons lead Chris Proctor, beloved in the Destiny 2 community for frequently sharing details from his legendary balance spreadsheet. We talked through the potential weapon mods, how to deal with power creep, the final shape's above average injection of new guns, and a whole lot more. I'm interested because I know we're doing away with mods. I hope we get some new ones. I'm interested to see what Chris feels like with the weapons. I mean, grenade launchers currently are the meta, so I'm interested to see what he says. To start, let's talk about why the spec mods are gone and why now is the time to get rid of them. I've heard some of the reasoning and I can guess some more, but I'd like to get your take. From Chris Proctor himself. We've long felt that spec mods, including Dragonfly spec and that kind of thing, were not very interesting mods. If you have Dragonfly, you must put on Dragonfly spec on your weapon. If this is a primary weapon, you must put on minor spec on your weapon. So anything that's a I mean, I always put like major and whatever, but okay. So anything that's a non-choice, we kind of want to remove from the pool. Bluntly, it's just boring. Agree. I think 100% those mods, it felt redundant. Like, okay, like why is this just not part of the package? Why do I have to get extra damage, put on a mod? Well, can't we just have mods that are interesting and cool? Like, I think of like Call of Duty. Granted, people are not going to like that comparison, but Call of Duty, like, you can design a gun and you can put attachments that do things like faster reload or better stability, or you can put a scope on it, like stuff like that, or put a silencer on so it's not as loud. Like, it's interesting. I would like that kind of build craft in Destiny. Obviously, we have perks for that, but you can still add modifications that add just a slight little change, just a little bit. So removing that, it's boring. What we've done in the final shape is crank the damage on almost all weapon types up after it accounts for removing the spec mods, which means that you can instead pick a mod that you're more interested in, which isn't a lot. Probably backup mags. For me, it's backup mags, which is also not perfect because in most cases, they're just going to... Yeah, I didn't read that. Is going to be backup mag. Although for certain weapon types, maybe counterbalance or something like that. But it opens the door for us to introduce new mods, which are more interesting in a future release. Ah, that sucks. So we're not going to get in the final shape. Lame. So there are no new mods coming in the final shape, but there will be further down the line. I was wondering if you're going to add new mods, obviously not to replace them with the same effect, but to fill that void of, okay, we have some open mod slots now. We're not defaulting to boss spec, as you say. So there might be an episode thing to come. We don't have specific release schedule we can talk about, but yeah, definitely in the upcoming release. Not like a year from now, but sometime in the the year of the final shape, we're intending to introduce more mods and make them more interesting, like expression of your playstyle, giving you more choices that actually matter. Like maybe adding scopes to guns that don't have scopes. I'm just saying, Bungie, like give me an option to add a scope to my gun. Like just ding, like a little hand cannon scope. I'm just saying. And I had the same reaction. We're running backup mag now. Maybe counterbalance in PvP. Looking at the damage bump, if we can get a bit nerdy with some of the math, what are the big winners here? Yeah, we can. The balance page is like 4 pages of numbers, but I can pick and choose some stuff. So firstly, certain things like rockets. Rockets are not gaining a damage bump because they are already far and away the most popular boss damage weapon. Yes, but I think what is becoming a contender right now in the meta is grenade launchers. I think Edge Transit, probably the best grenade launcher in the game, is only going to get better because of the buffs, and it's also going to be able to be enhanceable. Cataphract is adept and can be adept, but the boss spec is going away, so it has some advantages. You can put like adept mods. It's just incremental now that both Ear Edge and it can get enhanced perks. But overall, I think Edge Transit beats out, in my opinion, especially with the dual perks where you can do Envy Assassin and then swap to like Cascade and then do Explosive Light or do Bait and Switch. Overall, grenade launchers do massive damage. Do not sleep on them. Get you some God rolls. Do not sleep on them. Eventually, I think they will become too much of a hot topic where they might get nerfed. We'll see. Hopefully not. I hope not, because they're really fun now. They're honestly a little overtuned. We didn't feel like we needed to bring them down, but we weren't going to bring them up either. But pulse rifles are getting a 20% damage buff in PV. Pellet shotguns, 10%. Roughly those kind of numbers, 7 to 10% in general across most things. Linear fusion rifles, 5%. This is obviously this is a nerf. I mean, linear rifles suck balls for DPS right now. And boss spec gave them 7%. So they're getting nerfed even more. Machine guns are getting 7%, which is boss spec. Swords are getting 7%. That's boss spec. It's worth noting this applies to exotics as well, and that's significant because exotics can't equip spec mods. So that's just a flat buff to most, particularly special and heavy exotics, which had tended to lag a little behind legendaries. Yeah, so overall, my take is linear suck balls, and they really, I know they don't want them to be meta, but like they're just laughably bad now. So some weapons types like rockets aren't getting bumped up, but nothing's coming down. So our guns are getting stronger generally. Yeah, a little. Although since you would just equip those mods before, it's giving you more non-power options for customizing your weapons. And I think that's great. I think we need more of this. Like, obviously, if you give someone an option to have power, they're going to take the power option. But I would like to have it to where it's in a slot where there is no power, where you would just have that general use. And okay, maybe it's just backup nag now, but the intent is not to introduce a lot of power creep with exotics. We're okay with bumping those a little bit. The other aspect of this change is because almost all weapons are going up to like 7 to 10% or 20%, we've reduced the exotic damage bonus against red bar enemies from 40% to 30%. And with some of them, they're getting like 7% buff. So it's actually like they're losing 3% damage if you think about it, because they're going down from 40 to 30, and then some of them are going up by 7%. So it's like 3% loss. Some of them are going to 20%. So it's like a 17% increase versus like the full like 20%. So it's not as bad as it seems. So the exotics aren't losing out, but some exotics are also not going up. You're using Risk Runner, that's roughly even, but legendaries are coming up a bit. Was this partially motivated as a response to some of the feedback around legendary primaries against red bar enemies? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly why we started tackling that. We had it on our back burner for a long time. We really wanted to give players more options for mods and finish clearing out the spec mods. And this was just the perfect time to hit both of those. Because if we've done one and then the other, that probably would have been feels bad for players one way or another. So we're all on the same page that backup mag is going to be popular. Yes. Looking at the mod pool and the potential for future mods, how do we prevent having the same problem again? Instead of all spec, now it's backup mag all the time. How do we refresh that pool? I think it's a lesson that putting damage in the mod slot just takes away player choice, because players will almost always go for damage, exactly, if they have the option. So we probably wouldn't do that again. I think adept mods are a pretty good example of something we could do to make it more interesting. This is hypothetical. We're not doing this exact thing, but something like all weapons have the ability to slot +10 to any stat in the mod slot, and we bump adepts up to 15 or something. That would be an example where, yeah, you care about the stability and range and handling on a hand cannon, and you pick the one that most matches your playstyle the best, or something along those lines. We would like to actually go further with it and make mods more significant to build crafting overall, but yeah, it's way too early to drop any hints. Like drop mag. Anyone remember drop mag? That used to take away from your reserves, but kinetic weapons, primary weapons have infinite ammo now, which is so good. It was such a huge change for the game, in my opinion. It's such a better place to be. But drop mag, they could literally add that as a mod, drop mag. And so maybe you have, so let's say Midnight Q, I can get 14 shots. With drop mag, I get very fast reload, but I only get 6 shots. Like, that's the negative. You slot that in, you get but you only get 6 shots, which enhanced kinetic tremors would allow you to proc that or whatever, right? I would be okay if we had stuff like that where there's a negative, but there's like a huge positive. This is a separate topic, but still ties into the weapon sandbox. So right now, everyone's playing Onslaught and getting those god roll brave weapons. And we've just heard that sunsetting is now sunset, and some legacy gear will come back in the future, better than ever. So I've been thinking about how the final shape guns are going to earn a slot in my loadout without power creeping the game to oblivion. How do you make me put down the mountaintop, midnight coupe, and so on that I just got? It's a trickier one to answer. Just being completely honest, we accept a small amount of power creep. It is important that the new stuff be competitive with the old stuff. I don't think we're at risk of all the sunrise weapons suddenly being go-tos again, because everything from Witch Queen onward has an origin trait. Yeah, you could get Kindle Orchid with Rampage, Kill Clip, but it doesn't have an origin trait, which I'm gonna be honest. Let's finish this statement first. It doesn't have stats that are as high as some of the current weapons, that kind of thing. I think there are certain origin traits that are definitely worth it, but let's not act like Sundering from the Warlord's Ruin is just we must give up the old stuff for this new stuff, because some of the origin traits suck balls. Like, there are some really bad origin traits, and some of the other origin traits are just very minimal changes. So if there's something that's still good that you have that you're like, that's a god roll, you can still get away with using it, because 9 out of 10 times most of the origin traits are pretty mid. Indomitability from the Brave Arsenal is one of those, yeah, it's really good because it gives you just ability energy. That's like a W. But again, looking at Warlord's Ruin in that weapon set with Sundering, like, who the hell cares about that origin trait? We're also pushing more into the new types of experiences. Some more novelty. You probably experimented with some of the new weapon types like micro missiles. Obviously, the micro missile grenade launcher, rocket pistols, and the support auto rifle, or the aerial denial grenade launcher. There are a bunch of stuff in the final shape, including some things which you probably won't see until after the raid. Ooh. We expect those to fill fairly unique roles in the sandbox. So if you want a weapon that fills that role, you do go for the new thing. It feels like there's richer design space, at least from what I've seen and what you've described, with more options versus the same weapon types getting stronger, more colorful guns over better guns. Yeah, that's definitely a focus. We want players to have really cool, different options for things, not just providing vertical growth every release. I think that's smart. I think you can have powerful guns, but at the same time, I think you should introduce new roles, new, not just like perk roles, but like, what's the purpose of using this gun? Like, I feel the same way about strand weapons. Why would I use a strand weapon when we have kinetics? A perfect example, why use Nahim's Lance, which is the Warlord Ruins 140 sniper rifle, whereas Supremacy is a 140 from Last Wish. It's a kinetic. It gets triple tap, rewind rounds, or sorry, 4 times rewind rounds, bait and switch, rewind. It gets Kinetic Tremors Rewind, and it is one of the best, if not the best, sniper in the game. Why would I give a crap about Naheem's Lance? Like, elemental wise, like, who cares? I think we need more reason to put down certain things to play other guns, not just, oh, this has better perks or this has better damage. I want, like, what's the utility? What's the purpose? What role is this playing versus using a kinetic? So I like the idea of, like, the weapons that heal. Like, that is more support. Like, there's a role to fill there. It's not just, oh, all damage. I can also help my team survive. Power creep is definitely a word on my mind. Just 10 minutes ago, I finished unlocking all the prismatic stuff and was able to make my warlock build with the perfect exotic class item. Are you especially comfortable with a little bit of power creep here because it's the final shape? It's a big climatic expansion. Do you need to push the sandbox not just in prismatic, but also in the guns? I think there's a large amount of riding on the weapons landing really strong in the final shape. I think, yeah, we probably just need a little bit more as a result, but Destiny's continuing. We've definitely got plans for the next few years after this. So we need to not consume all the power space in the final shape. We've got to keep the game going. Okay, so that's him saying that Destiny's not dead. At least we hope. Compared to previous expansions, especially Witch Queen and Lightfall most recently, how does the sheer quantity of new guns compare to the final shape? A little above average or about par for the course? Slightly above average. I think Witch Queen, if I remember correctly, had like 48 weapons or something like that. Lightfall had slightly less. Yes, Lightfall was a joke. The final shape has slightly more. A lot of the weapons are high profile. You probably saw the Season of the Dawn weapons popping up there with the origin trait. I think the quantity overall is the same because the episode is longer. It's like a 4-month season, so there are more seasonal weapons. It went from 6 weapons to 10, so that's definitely higher. And we're also rotating weapons a little bit more, rotating more weapons through the pools for ritual, sort of like trials and that kind of thing. Again, because of the longer seasons. Yes, Seasons of the Dawning weapons are coming back. Oh, I can't wait to get Perfect Paradox, Pyroclastic Flow. That rocket looks hot. And of course, I've got to get my little sidearm. I'm excited. I'm actually excited for weapons. And it seems like Bungie is making good on, hey, we're going to bring back some of the sunset stuff. Keep it going, Bungie. Bring it back. Let's do it. Keep going. And as I was thumbing through some of the new guns, it felt like special attention has been paid to element types and specific weapon archetypes. Oh, we didn't have that many strand options here or this many void options for this type, that kind of thing. It feels like the final shape has helped filled out a lot of those gaps and part of the support prismatic, which is super damage type heavy. Yeah, definitely. Prismatic puts some pressure on that. We're always on the lookout for holes to fill, whether that's all up roster, which is a little bit less important now with summarizing, but also just the currently acquirable pool of the weapons should have representative damage type and weapon combinations as much as we're able. We're complicating it for ourselves, of course, by introducing new weapon types as well. So, yeah, now we got to introduce new damage types for the rocket pistol in addition to all the things we already had. Yeah, so we're getting apparently a strand hand rocket, a sidearm, and I'm okay with that. That means that can go in our kinetic slot. I'm all for that. This was about the most loaded question I can give you. But how do you see these sandbox changes affecting the DPS meta, which, as you said, is very rocket heavy? I'll refer again to my balance page. I actually think that the DPS meta, particularly for the final shape rate, is going to be very different from normal. I'm not going to drop any hints about it, but the setup of the raid is such that certain strategies that the players are banking on are not going to work because of how the encounters are set up. There are some specific changes we've got, like rockets are relatively slightly weaker because machine guns and swords are coming up. There are some new sword meta options that are coming. I think we'll see a shift around a bit. Rockets are still strong. I think a team that comes prepped with rockets will do fine, but there'll be less dominance. You figured we'd still pull out rockets anyway? Speaking of rockets, you might want to try Truth. Really? Tripod is finally going to justify it? Poor Truth has been just abandoned for the longest time. Yeah, we made a change where the AoE damage is now as high as the total impact plus AoE on other weapons. So you've got 3 in the mag. It fires full strength rockets, and they've got more reserves. There's a bunch of other exotic weapon changes like that. The final shape release date is set for June 4th. All right, let's dissect this last part. So this whole part about the raid, 2 things are going to happen that I think are going to happen. One, we're going to have roaming bosses. Divinity is getting a nerf. Specifically, they worded it in a way that makes it very specific that moving enemies or enemies that get a line of sight will break the cage, which right now the only boss that I know that can do that is Nezarec when he teleports. You're going to have to reapply Divinity, and it's going to take 75% more to reapply, so you're using more ammo. And why would you use Divinity? Crits, but also rockets have been predominantly used to shoot the bubble with Galahorn. You have a moving boss. Rockets are harder to hit. Divinity's been nerfed. I think it's either going to be a moving boss and or in addition, it could be one or the other or both. We're going to have more mechanic heavy raid mechanics. That was redundant. We're going to have a raid encounter with more mechanics like Spire of the Stars, where you did a lot of mechanics and at the very end you had this much actual DPS time. Like, it wasn't, the DPS wasn't the big thing of the raid. It was survival and doing the mechanics, and then you shot the boss. And it's very possible that that's the thing. It could be one, it could be both. I think it's going to be both. I think we're going to have moving bosses and it's going to be very mechanic heavy. So I think GLs will do very well. GLs are usually prototypically better for moving targets. Usually bigger moving targets. The smaller ones, not so much, but bigger targets. I think this is very interesting. We know right now that rockets are probably in their line of thought of what's the next to nerf. They didn't buff them, but they're not nerfing them. I think they're going to let them ride for the final shape just because it seemed like for the most part, Bungie has reduced the amount of nerfs. And they're honestly not as bad. Usually when they nerf things, they nerf them to the ground. Like actually Well's pretty much nerfed, but outside of that, weapon wise, I don't see like significant massive nerfs. A lot more buffs. So I'm excited to see the new weapons. It sounds like we're gonna have new toys to play with that are gonna fit different roles. You let me know in the comments down below what you think. I'm excited for the raid. I would not expect to have a rocket as your must go. I would farm a good sword, which is also probably why they nerfed Well, is because they learned from Crota. So I would have Titans with sunspots. I would have healing nades and all kinds of healing setup and maybe a bubble. We'll see. As always, I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor. Until next time, hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe for more. Until next time, game out. Huzzah.